Sorry, my dog was just coming in from going outside, so it was loud. I had it on mute. So I was going to play a little French music as people were joining.
How are you guys this evening?
All right. I'm going to add a couple more people. Give it a little more time. So, Diana, since we just got a few people here right now, I think like when we talked the other day, like all of us yesterday, that was 25 minutes and the day before was like 20 minutes. And so I'm just going to play the one where we were all together yesterday.
Okay.
During the call. And then I'll just post the other one. So
okay.
Learn more since that had all of us in it anyway.
Sure.
Yeah, once I saw that, okay, here are a couple more people. One more. Hi, Charlotte. That always happens. So that's her daughter's name, but that always happens to me too on my Zooms where I'm my kids' names right now. And I'm going to actually see about sharing this on Facebook. Well, we're just giving it a couple more minutes.
Such an interesting way to communicate nowadays, isn't it?
It sure is. Let's see. This one pull and share. I know, like I've live streamed them before, and it's just not showing up here for some reason. Let's see if there's anything. Sorry, bear with me one more minute while I'm seeing if I can share it to Facebook. It's disappointing. One more minute, sorry. It's got to be on the web portal. Hold on. Oh, well, I'm going to post it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, well, I'm going to start by saying hello to everyone and welcome to Sips and Trips Bordeaux edition. We are here with Jones von Drehle Winery. We have Diana, who is one of the owners of the winery, and Dan, who is their winemaker. So we're going to learn a lot about their wines tonight, but also the Bordeaux region in general. So someone is here. Let me admit. Someone else should be popping in. Hello. So I'm going to start off by sharing my screen. I have a little slideshow with some images of the winery, and Diana and Dan can talk about them as we go through them. So give me just a sec. Share. This is not my first Zoom, and yet it's not giving me any of the normal options that I normally have, like live streaming. This is really weird. What if I do speaker view?
Would you like me to talk a little bit about history, who we are?
Yes.
While you're doing that?
Also, while you're talking about that, while I'm trying to get this screen up, talk about why you think your property is good for the Bordeaux style grapes.
Absolutely. So Jones von Drehle is a family vineyard. Myself and my husband, my sister and her husband are the owners. And, this started up many, many years ago. We lived in California for 4 years, and just a love of fine wine brought us together. Did a lot of research for our site. One of the things that we think makes Jones Van Drehle special is that we are 100% estate grown and produced. So because we knew we wanted to grow all of our own fruit, it was important to have the right site. Terroir is a sense of place, and that the terroir has to be such a place that brings together all of those aspects that helps grow beautiful fruit. And we found that in this piece of property. It was initially a 65-acre piece of property right on the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Great elevation at between 1,500 and 1,600 feet, with tucked up right against the mountain that Roaring Gap sits on top of. So we get a tremendous amount of wind. The soils are very rocky. Great slope, good drainage, south facing, all of those aspects that together grow beautiful fruit. We've always loved these styles of wines. And so when we started researching what we thought would grow well here, the Bordeaux grapes we felt had great potential. And they were planted in specific places in the vineyard to help bring out the best of them and to thrive in those places. And so we started this. Go ahead.
Can you see my screen right now?
I can see Chloe on your screen.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you could see that. Okay.
Yes, yes.
We had to start with Chloe.
Of course, she is the rock star of the vineyard.
Even Bordeaux Excellence noticed her as their mascot, as they called it.
Yes, I thought that was quite amusing when they asked me about the dog.
You want me to go ahead and scroll, or you want to go a little bit more?
No, yeah, feel free to. And Dan, please hop in anytime you want.
So we're going from Bordeaux to the hills of North Carolina.
And that was the winery and the tasting room in the distance there. The vineyard is 30 acres. We found the property in 2007. In 2008, we spent preparing the land and building the structure of the vineyard. And then in 2009, we planted our vineyard, a 30-acre vineyard. 24,300 vines were planted. Because of our site, our terroir, we did things a little bit differently. For instance, our canopy is higher than normal. The cordon wire comes off the ground at 42 inches. The vines are spaced a little further apart. We're looking for airflow through those vines because we live in a humid, wet environment. Some years worse than others. Last year we
humid, wet, and windy.
And windy. Yes, that's right.
You might mention what it does to the patio furniture and your barbecue.
Yes, the wind is our friend, so we never want to criticize it, but there are times when it's quite ferocious. And it blew over, at one point it blew over a very large grill that probably weighs close to 100 pounds. So
it's 200 or 300 pounds. I've moved it.
Okay. And so first harvest was 2012, and our grand opening was May of 14.
Speaking of the harvest, so you got some pictures of it being
Yes.
The grapes.
Yes. We hand pick everything. In fact, most of what we do in the vineyard is by hand. And we field sort so we hire extra people to go through the grapes as they're being put in the bins to try to pull out anything, anything other than grapes, or, any grapes that don't look quite as good as the others before they even make it up to the winery.
And speaking of the winery.
And that's the tasting room there.
Pre-COVID photos here.
Obviously. We look for
I don't have a picture of is your terrace. I did a Facebook Live from there this weekend, but it's the perfect place to go right now for those of us who don't want to be inside. There's more seating outside than inside, and it's a beautiful view. You can see all of the vines from on top of the hill.
Well, and inside, we have gone back to inside. We started that early December, and we're doing reservations. And so we've been able to spread people apart. You can tell the bar is quite large, and it's worked really well right now.
I had a picture of, I think it got out of order. I apologize. I had a picture. Let me just skip down. Yeah, it got out of order. I had a picture of the barrels in the back and a group learning more about the wines with Dan, but somehow I deleted that, so I apologize. But so from North Carolina, we make the connection to Bordeaux. I posted about this property today. It's one of the ones in the Virtuoso network that I can get my clients some extra amenities at. But I mean, this is what I think of when I think of France, like staying at a place like this amongst the vines. It's just so rustic and elegant, and I am not going to try to say it because I know I'll murder it. But another picture I wanted to show you was of this Chateau, Flans-Ségur, which we will be doing a virtual visit to in a bit. We had the owner do a little video greeting for us. So I'll stop here in a second for any questions, but I love this picture from Jones Van Drell because it has all the lavender in the foreground, and that is what our Thursday night event is about. It's about the lavender in the Provence region of France. So I thought that was a really lovely tie-in.
Well, that was a thanks to Dan, because Dan went out there and planted all that lavender.
Gotcha. I love it.
Is the reason for the lavender to attract bees?
No, actually it was just mainly for aesthetics. We don't need pollinators. The grapes are self-pollinating, so you actually don't want to. It's sort of a conflict. You really don't want to attract bees or yellow jackets to the vineyard because they can tend to get into the grapes when they get super ripe. They can be a problem. Not so much honeybees, but they can be a problem, especially when you're trying to process. We've had a few times when thousands of bees just come all over the crush pad.
So sorry to Julia and Kathy, who it did not give me a warning that there were people in the waiting room while I was presenting my screen. So I apologize for that. We were just doing a quick little tour of the Jones Van Drell winery before taking off to Bordeaux. But I guess first of all, we want to talk about, before we go to Bordeaux, we want to talk about your Merlot, right? That's the first one we're going to talk about.
Absolutely. So this is our 2015 Merlot. You know, Merlot is a grape that really fell out of favor for a while. I've read an interesting article today in Wine Spectator that Merlot is making a comeback in several areas around this country. Right now, it's the third most popular red wine grape in the country. You know, have any of y'all seen the movie Sideways? And Sideways, it was, I guess back in the early 2000s, it came out, and there was one statement in that movie about how nobody's drinking any Merlot anymore. And that's exactly what happened. So Merlot sales dropped significantly, and Pinot Noir sales grew. So I'm glad that Merlot is making a comeback. It's a beautiful grape and goes with a lot of different foods. And Dan, you want to take over and talk a little bit about this Merlot?
Well, it's the biggest planting. I think we have 5 different clones. Typically, it's a blend of at least 2, maybe 3 different clones. We're kind of zeroing in on the clones that we prefer. Clone 18 and 343 are our favorites. And being that it's all estate grown, we really are able to control a lot of the processing. The minute we pick the grapes, they're up to the winery within about 30 minutes or less. So we're processing them as quickly as we can. We cold soak everything, all the reds are cold soaked typically for about 3 or 4 days. And that's kind of to allow a less aggressive extraction process, kind of like the difference between a hot cup of tea and a sun tea, which is extracted much more gently. So a cold soak is a way of extending the maceration, but it's not aggressive. And then we inoculate about 3 or 4 days after the cold soak, and we're off and running. This wine was barrel aged, I think, almost for, was it 3.5?
42 months.
40, yeah. And it's a mixture of primarily French, but some Hungarian and American oak. I was talking to Diana you're always trying to find analogies or a word choice that kind of relays some of our winemaking practices. And one of the things that I learned early on when I started out in California, we do a lot of what we call stirring and topping, but the French would call it délestage and or bâtonnage. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of a different process, but bâtonnage is stirring, where you're taking a stick and sweeping the bottom of the barrel. And on the young reds, like the 2020 reds that we harvested, we're stirring and topping or doing the bâtonnage once a week for the first 6 to 8 months. And it's kind of the difference between somebody who sits at home and is kind of a couch potato versus somebody that goes to the gym. It gives the wine, it works the wine, it gives it some body and it chisels, it defines, it helps it integrate with the oak. It seems like a silly thing, but over time, small steps make a difference. And bâtonnage is one of those things that really helps over time, but you have to start early and continue for the first year. And some of the wines they remain on those yeast leaves for up to 2 years sometimes. And then we start prepping them for bottling up to a year in advance by racking off the yeast leaves. But those yeast leaves are what really helps define or provide some integration with the oak and the fruit, and helps with the mouthfeel. Sometimes when you taste a red wine, it's not quite, kind of like when you meet some people, they're not all put together yet. And sorry, but that's one of the things that we start early and we continue through the first year, and we do a lot of topping periodically to make sure that the barrels lose they have a lot of evaporative loss, anywhere from 1 to 3% a year you lose from evaporative loss. So we have to get in and top the barrels periodically. So
one of the questions you asked was about, the Bordeaux grapes that we're growing. I wanted to say, when we talked about doing this, we grow all 5 major noble Bordeaux grapes. But so we chose Merlot because Merlot is a major player in Bordeaux. But the other 2 wines you're going to taste or hear about are 2 of the more minor players, but still very important players in the Bordeaux region. So as I said, we grow all 5. The other 2 are Cab Sauv, which is a big player, and Malbec. So
tell me what hints I'm getting in the glass, and tell me about the tannins and all those good things with it.
Well, the one thing about Merlot that's nice is, Merlot has softer tannins than like a big cab. But so that's Merlot. That's one of the reasons that as a blend from Bordeaux, Merlot is mixed with Cab Sauv to soften that Cab Sauv somewhat. But go ahead, Dan, I'll let you.
Well, one of the things that Chuck and I discussed when for the first vintage, what style, what is our list of priorities when it comes to making a wine. And one of the things is we wanted them to be fruit forward. We want to be able to smell the fruit. We want to have some oak, but we don't want it to dominate. We don't want something that looks like a red wine, but it smells like an oak barrel. We want the fruit to be present. And we want the tannins to be developed. That's where the batonnage comes in. But it's also, you just want a combination of fruit character with a touch of oak, but you want some mouthfeel or texture to it that is in sync and that meshes with everything all at once, if that's making sense. I don't, sometimes I'm at a loss for words, but you want that fruit character. Go ahead.
Say that again, Jen.
I said the more I drink it, the more it will make sense, right?
Well, and in terms of your other question was about what am I tasting? You know, we always give some of that information in the material we write, but I hesitate to say to people, this is what you're tasting, this is what you're smelling, because, you know, we all have our own DNA and there's not a wrong answer, because some people are more sensitive than other people. Women tend to be able to be more, what are they called, Dan? The tasters?
Well,
the
women,
super
especially
taster.
during pregnancy, I mean, are amazing.
So one of my kids have noticed that they learned that in National Geographic or something, that women have more taste buds, and they're like, so that's like the only real difference between men and women, right? I'm like, yeah, sure. that's
Well, I did, when I worked at Steamy Winery years ago, I did a class at Sonoma State on aging, and they were saying that women typically have a superior sense of smell, but they tend to lose it at an earlier age. Men tend to hang on to their olfactory senses for a longer period of time. So I would always tell Zelma, my boss, Zelma, you're always going to be better than me, but there will come a time when I'm better than you. So get busy.
But you can train your sense of smell. I mean, you know, we don't use that sense of smell as much as we use vision and taste, but that sense of smell is very important when it comes to evaluating a wine.
Also coming up with a vocabulary so you can keep.
That's exactly
so that
right.
The words that I'm using mean the same to the person I'm trying to talk with. But typically our Merlot is known for its kind of berry characteristics, blackberry primarily, I think, and it usually is about 10 or 15% new oak, with the rest of it once or twice used, with the remaining balance of the oak barrels being what we call neutral. But the process of aging in oak helps what they call integrate the tannins, soften them over time, so that by the time we bottle the wine, we're typically, we weren't sure. I mean, we've kind of evolved over time, but we used to barrel age. Typically in California, the barrel aging protocol is about 16 months. Ours has moved up to about 40 months for almost all of our reds, except for maybe Tempranillo. So we just found that barrel aging, it just improves. They get better with age. Our 2012 Malbec, we thought, I've said this before, it was like that child of yours. Is this thing ever going to amount to anything? And you're patient. I mean, I remember Chuck, we would taste the 2012 Malbec and we didn't like it. Nobody liked it. But my job as a winemaker is to just keep going back and keep tweaking. And after about 2.5 years, we had a tasting with the Malbec, and all of a sudden the aging process, it just came around. And now it's one of our best sellers, but it just takes a little more time. Interrupt at any time. I run at the mouth. You know me, Diana. So
well, I will play a little bit of our video from yesterday. I think I'll cut it off at some point, and then we'll come back and we can taste the next wine.
Well, if you have wine, cheers.
Cheers. Does anyone have any questions based on what we've talked about so far before I start sharing my screen again? Please feel free to, you can always put it in the chat too, but I mean, there's not too many of us that we can't have conversation, so please feel free. And the reason that we don't have live from France, of course, is that it's 6 hours ahead there. So we pre-recorded, and actually I pre-recorded twice because we did it on Friday or Thursday, I don't know, but in Diana, I sent her the wrong link. I don't know, Zoom, like I picked something off of Zoom, but it wasn't the right link. And the one time my phone is not right beside me, she's texting me, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. And so here I am talking to people in France. I'm like, I guess we'll go with her and we'll just do it. So we redid it yesterday. So I have both recordings. I'll post one on line on my social media later. It's a shame because it's different information, but I also don't want to keep you here for 45 minutes with pre-recorded stuff. So I will play all of us speaking yesterday, and I'll stop it, a few, like 10 minutes in, and then we can go over our next wine. So, but it is interesting. And I'm not, like, I like to drink wine, but I don't know a lot about wine. So I thought it was really interesting what I was learning. So, let's see, go back to sharing, get out of this. I think the tab where it's at is like hidden by the Zoom thing. So we'll just go, here we go.
Don't tour people through the vineyard. Our vineyard can be seen. All right, here we are with take 2 because I actually had a technical issue and did not put the right link during the Montreal other day. And so, yeah, we're going to keep the presentation we already did, but I just wanted to have an opportunity for region, my expert, and the winery to all be able to chat together for a few minutes before you guys get connected. So, Corinne, the other day when we were all talking,
Can you hear it okay, Diana?
No, I can't hear it.
Uh-oh. What about now?
A little better.
I found really interesting with your vineyard, Johnson Drehle Vineyard, as I mentioned, the way that you are planting. It seems that you planted the same red variety that we have in Bordeaux for the red. But here in Bordeaux, as I'm sure you know, but we don't have the choice. I mean, if we want to be in the appellation, AOC, it's a little bit like UAVA, American Viticultural Area. And if we want to write appellation on a label, we have to respect a certain number of rules. And one main rule will be the use of specific red variety. That's why in Bordeaux, we have the Merlot, we have the Chateau, the Cab Franc, the Petite Fudo, the Malbec that I've seen you have in your vineyard. And we have also the Cabernet. Do you have the Cabernet?
No, but we are seriously looking at that grape.
Can you all hear it now that I'm not speaking on the video?
I could hear it, yeah.
Okay.
I've seen that you have the Tempranillo, but we don't have it. It's more in Spain, But for the red, you really have the same red variety we grow in Bordeaux. So that's really interesting, the link between you and the Bordeaux region.
And though a very different terroir, I mean, here we are much higher and on the side of a mountain, different kinds of winds, different kinds of soils. Those grapes thrive here.
Wow. Yeah. It's
so interesting because Bordeaux is so flat, so obviously completely different in terms of just the pure landscape. I'm not sure how your climate is where you are located. If it's because we're very close to the ocean, so we have our climate doesn't vary too much. It doesn't go up to the very highs and the very lows. So I don't know if it's that kind of the same where you are.
Do you want me to address that, Dan?
Okay, I was told that it's hard to hear, so I don't want to waste everyone's time with it. I hate that. I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, I turned it up all the way. I don't know how to do it Oh, you know what? I know what it is. Okay, I'm gonna try it one more time. It was hooked up to a different microphone that of a webcam that wasn't giving me good color earlier. So let me try it again, and then you guys can let me know. And if not, we'll just. I hate it because I love listening to all the accents from overseas. But hold on just a second. We'll see.
I was going to say it's very, very variable. Some years, last year, I think we got something close to 80 inches of rain. Typically, it's more like 30 or 40 inches. We're having a very different winter this year from last winter, which doesn't affect the vines so much, but it's just, we're hoping for a more consistent, what's the word? We're hoping for a year like we had in 15 or 14 or 12 or 17 or 19. Last 2019 was amazing, but 2020, I mean, we had the cicadas, which is insect plague. We had an earthquake, which we had the biggest earthquake in North Carolina in 100 years. So
do you get some frost as well?
We have a challenge with frost. Every spring. We're a little bit more protected because we're higher elevation. We're at the base of a mountain range called the Blue Ridge, and so we get a lot of the cooling of the cold air tends to go further at lower elevation. So we get a little more wind flow. We get a little bit bigger change in nighttime temperatures, which is good for us. So we get this wind flow, but we get a cooling effect typically at night when 20 miles south of us. Like Jen, you're in Charlotte, right?
Just north, so yeah.
Yeah, so you're probably, nighttime temperatures are probably as much as 10, maybe even 15 degrees higher.
Oh, you really?
At night. Daytime temperatures are probably more closely, a little bit closer, but yeah.
So we don't have so many challenges talking about the climate. I think we can get some frost, but with the oceanic climate, and as Joel said, we don't have very high temperature, but with the weather changing, the climate is changing, so we had that summer with very high temperature, and you know what happened? I mean, they stop the maturity, they stop the ripeness, and then it's hard to then go on mid-September, it's cooler, so then it can be better. But I mean, and we don't irrigate, that's the difference between you and France, and especially Bordeaux. We don't do any irrigation. That's another point for the appellation, because it's forbidden. We can't. I mean, but as you know,
what do you do with young vines when you plant new vines?
We do irrigate them. We do water them. The first 3 years we do water them, but then we stop irrigation, and then we can use them for the wine. Yeah, for the young wine. Yeah, till the roots are not deep enough. Yeah, we water them. That's right.
Well, that is one similarity, though we are allowed to irrigate. We have no need, as you had just heard, with that much rain.
Yeah.
But at least we haven't since we started this.
I've seen something interesting also about the white. I mean, you're really making very different white that we have in Bordeaux, because in Bordeaux we're using the Sauvignon Blanc, the Semillon, the Muscadelle. That's the three main red variety we're using for the white, the sweet, and the dry. And I've seen you more using the red variety that we can find more in the south in France.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Semillon, Sauvignon Blanc would be we have a few plants of Sauvignon Blanc, but we thought of planting it, but it is challenging with our climate, our humidity, and the rainfall. It tends to rot.
Too much.
So.
And Petite Fudo has just been a beautiful grape for us. There's a lot of excitement in Virginia and North Carolina about this grape.
Which one?
Petite Fudo.
Oh, Petit Vincent. Yeah.
It's very disease resistant. It retains its acidity. That's one thing we do like about Sauvignon Blanc. We have the few plants that we have. It has beautiful acidity, but it doesn't hold up to the disease pressure that the Petit Vincent does, because it's a looser cluster, thick skin, and amazing acidity. So
very interesting. Are you making only dry? You're making only dry white, or you are also making sweet white wine?
No, we're making only dry wines.
Only dry.
Yes. There's plenty of sweet wine in North Carolina. A different type of grape is used in general, and so yeah, we decided to go this route.
So I used to serve Jones Mondrell wines at some events in Charlotte, and people would come up to us and say, like, "What do you have that's sweet?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
Nothing.
certainly not me.
I do have one question for you about hybrids, and is Bordeaux or France beginning to think about hybrid grapes?
Yeah, we do, and especially I know for the Bordeaux general appellation, they're thinking and they are doing some experimentation of using other, grape variety, and some that are not used in Bordeaux for the moment. So it's just experimentation for the moment. The CIVB that is dealing with the wine merchant, the production of wine. We're thinking about dealing especially against the disease or also against the weather changing. So they are, for the moment, it's really experimentation. So
and so are they true hybrids? They're not two crosses of the neck or a different grape, but a hybrid, an American and a French grape?
It's always the same. Yeah, we're still using it's still the way we do.
Okay.
I mean, we're still using American rootstock.
Okay.
With the grape variety, the different variety they can have according to the rootstock, according to the soil we have, but it's still American rootstock. Since the Phylloxera crisis, it's still the way we're doing. So there are very few places where they are not American rootstock, especially not far from Chateau Margaux. There is an island where apparently they don't have any American rootstock, but otherwise all over Bordeaux, it's American rootstock. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
With the whole question of climate change, there is a lot of experimentation in Bordeaux at the moment. Corinne mentioned the only grape varieties we're able to use, but that's going to evolve as the years come, and the rules that are kind of set in stone and have been for centuries are starting to change just because of the climate change and the way that the grapes react. So there will be changes over the next few years, but there's a lot of experimentations going on at the moment.
Yeah, that I think that's why also some grape variety like Petite Fudo that you're using, we are planting more and more in Bordeaux. That's a very difficult grape variety to grow, and the ripeness is always very difficult to get. So before, 10 or 15 years ago, we didn't get so much, but now in the Médoc, for example, they're planting more and more Petit Verdot, and that's interesting. You have another cuvée which is Steel and Stone, no?
Yes.
Yeah. Where you're using much more Petit Verdot than Cabernet Sauvignon. I think it's really amazing. And in the Médoc, it will be the contrary normally. More Cab and less Petit Verdot, even if you have some wineries that are using a lot of Petit Verdot in the blend. I really like Petit Verdot.
I do too, yes.
Yes, it's been very successful for us here, both the grape and the wine.
excited to try it tomorrow night.
Yeah, but you have one cuvée 100%. Do you?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, well, here in Bordeaux, we don't. We have, that's really the difference. We have most 95%, I would say, it's blending wines, even if you can find 100% Merlot, 100% Sauvignon Blanc, for example, but you won't find any 100% Capsule, it will be too tannic, too harsh. And 100% Petit Verdot, I've heard that there is one estate that is making 100% Petit Verdot, but I never tasted it yet. So I have.
And what about Cabernet Franc?
Cabernet Franc will be always the great variety with the Merlot, for example. In Saint-Emilion, on the right bank, you have the typical blend will be Merlot, Cab Franc, very few Cabernet Sauvignon, and sometimes you can get Malbec. But Cabernet Franc will be always, I would say, the grape variety coming with the Merlot. Even if you have some Chateau, Cheval Blanc, for example, that have more Cabernet Franc than Merlot, which is quite unusual, So
I think that's a good spot to try the Cabernet Franc.
I was thinking the same thing.
Am I still, hey, why is I thought I was stopped sharing it, but I show black in this.
No, you're good.
Oh, you can see me? Okay.
Right,
Oh,
yeah.
I'm 2 times on the screen. That's the problem. Okay. So let me get my Cab
So-
Franc.
So we're moving to the Cab Franc. As you heard in Bordeaux, Cab Franc tends to be it's like the third grape of Bordeaux. It's a great grape. It's a very versatile grape. So it's grown in a lot of different places. I mean, they're growing it up in New York. They're growing it here in North Carolina and Virginia. California's doing some. It ripens a little faster than the Cab Sauv in the field. It's hardy. It loves this site here at the vineyard. And it's a grape and a wine that we really like a lot. Dan, you want to talk about the 2015 Cab Franc?
Well, I think the challenge with Cab Francs is sometimes they're known, they can be very vegetative sometimes, and that's the challenge is to try and balance the vegetative growth so that you don't get that pyrazine character or green beans sometimes. I grew up eating my mom's canned green beans, so I know exactly if you've had a Cab Franc that's vegetative, you'll know it dominates the fruit. You don't really taste the fruit. And the way you manage it, especially on the East Coast, all up and down the East Coast, because we don't have control over the rainfall, it tends to encourage vegetative growth, which can encourage that kind of pyrazine character in some. But we have the advantage that we have at our site, I think, is it's a hillside vineyard. It's not flat, and so that when it does rain, it just runs off for the most part. Most of the rain just runs right off the vineyard. It doesn't get deep enough into the root system to keep that vegetative cycle going. You really want, usually around July when they start going through color change, what we call veraison. Yeah, that's when you really want, that's why in some of the best years in 15, in 19, 14, 12, the rain pretty much stopped around July. And when you get that control over the vegetative growth, all of the plant's energy goes into fruit production and not vegetative growth. And it's especially important with Cab Franc because if you can't control the vegetative growth, you get a very vegetative Cab Franc. But it's probably the best site in the entire vineyard for the Cab Franc. I think Chuck, it's his favorite red. And it's a challenge. I've had if you like a wine that tastes like green beans, that's what some of them are like. But ours, the fruit does pop. Again, this has a little bit more new oak, I think I'm smelling in the nose. But it's still, the recipe is usually around 15, maybe sometimes pushing 20% new oak. What else?
I have a question about the oak barrels. Like, why is it that I like red wine in oak, but not white wine? Like an oak Chardonnay, that's not for me. Like,
the oak, I'm going to guess here. I would think that sometimes people use oak, like, I love garlic to a fault. I will add garlic to everything. If I'm barbecuing salmon I'll put garlic on it. And it tends to dominate the meal. Even, and I love garlic, but some people don't. And oak is one of those, it's kind of like garlic, if too much, and it kind of covers up all of the other qualities that the wine has to offer. And I think with a white wine, maybe what you're tasting is it's dominating the white wine and covering up maybe the fruit character in a way that isn't pleasing for you. That's my guess. I don't really know. What you're saying is you prefer a steel Chardonnay over a barrel Chard, maybe? Is that what you're saying? Or you don't like whites that are aged in oak?
I was in Chile and Argentina. I feel like they told me that all if they have reserve, it's been a while, but if they have reserve on the bottle, that means it was oaked. It was in an oak barrel versus a steel barrel.
Uh-huh.
And so everyone that I tasted like that was better to me. But when I would much rather have an unoaked Chardonnay. Like I can't drink an oak Chardonnay. So
Well, the fruit typically shouts out at you a little bit more for a non-oaked wine. The acid might be a little crisper because sometimes they go through malactic, so that it's maybe a little softer on a barrel fermented Chardonnay. Our barrel fermented doesn't go through ML. But the mistake that a lot of winemakers I see, that I've seen in my career, is that more oak is better, just like more garlic is better. But
so you're able to withhold from too much oak, but just not too much garlic. That's what I'm hearing.
Can I ask a question?
yeah, and that's one of the things that Chuck and I discussed early on, was what is the right amount of oak. And we started out barrel aging for shorter periods of time, but we also were worried that the longer you barrel age, the stronger the oak influence. But you can avoid that if you have the right balance of neutral oak, because neutral oak they're not going to have much in the way of oak flavoring, but they're still excellent for aging a red. They have a certain amount of oxygen transfer, and you also have that anywhere from 2 to 4% evaporative loss every year, and that's all water. It's not, when you have that evaporative loss over year after year, it actually concentrates the flavor of the wine over time.
Who had the question? Oh, I did.
You can put your hand down.
So when you say like eat is so much percentage of new oak, do you have wine that's an all new oak barrel and then you blend it? Like how are you getting like 15% new oak versus the rest?
We have most of our fermenters, when they go through a fermentation and they get pressed, we keep all the lots separate. So like for Merlot, there might be anywhere from 2 to 5 different Merlot lots. And each one of those lots is evaluated. And if we think it's worthy of new oak, it gets up to, like if it's a 20 barrel lot, it's going to have 2 or 3, maybe 4 new oak, and the rest of it's going to be once used, twice used, or what we call neutral oak. So each lot gets a certain amount of new oak. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
But later, that's initially, and then they get barrel aged for anywhere from 2 to 4 years. But then you have to make a decision which lots are worthy of a final blend. And typically, the new oak and not always, but most of the time, we pump out the entire lot and blend it with that 10 or 15. They all get blended at the end. Sometimes if we think we're lacking in oak character, we might pump out more of the new oak and fewer of the neutral, or the other way around. If we think we have too much new oak, we'll tweak the blend by putting more neutral oak, or just the other way around, we'll pump out more of the new oak. The thing is, it's once you have too much new oak, you can't take it back except you can blend it away. So we found over time that 10 or 15% in most of our final blends, it represents 10 or 15% new oak, but initially the new oak is kept separate in its own barrel for that 2 to 4 years. We also taste those new oak separately because we're always evaluating the cooperages. Cooperages are barrel making companies. They're like car dealerships. They're all in the business to sell barrels, and they're all saying we make the very best cars and we make the very best barrels, so buy ours. But we still go through and taste that new oak because cooperages can change just like the brand of an automobile. We go back and taste just to see if that's the oak character that we want. We have Taranso, which is a French cooperage. Trust International is Hungarian. Canton is an American oak manufacturer out of Missouri. And we evaluate them. And the whole thing about oak is the toast level. They have medium toast, medium long, heavy toast. So toasting is a big part of the flavoring portion of the oak. So you have to decide what toast level. Do you want thin stave or standard export stave? A thinner stave is going to have a little more oxygen transport. Diana, you can cut me off anytime you want.
How about
I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it typically
Perfect. Thank you.
typically all the barrels each lot gets a certain amount of new oak if we think it's worthy of the new oak. If in 2020, all the lots went to barrels, but some of them got no new oak because we weren't sure if the wine quality. Why put a mediocre red wine into a brand new $700 to $1,200 barrel if we don't think the quality's there? So usually our very best lots get that 10 or 15, maybe 20% new oak. And then near the end of the process, after 2 or 3, 4 years in the barrel, then we blend everything together or blend the portions that we think are worthy together. Yeah.
So since Dan touched on it, I thought I would just add in here, the weather every year is very influential in terms of, the wines and the grapes. And 2020 was definitely a challenging year in more ways than one. And for us, weather was very challenging. Now, we were not affected by the frost that so many vineyards in Virginia and North Carolina were. We didn't lose fruit, but it took a lot of work in the vineyard. So it'll still be quite some time as we evaluate these wines to determine, what we think of them. I mean, I think you guys were fairly happy with what we got this year, considering the challenges that we had.
There's a few disappointments, but most of the lots. But again, one thing this business has told me is to withhold judgment. To
remember the 2012 Malbec.
Yeah, I mean, you have your impressions, and then I just put them away, and I will sample from the lot. There's certain wines that I've tried to put in front of Chuck for years, and to see if our opinion of them has changed. And I'm doing the same.
There was one, well, this is a good example. There was one that we weren't very sure about for quite some time, and it ended up being best in show in a competition. So
which one was that?
The 2013 Steel and Stone.
Oh, yeah. Well, the 2013 Steel and Stone was two things that weren't very good, but when we blended them together, it worked out. I mean, we had when you find that you've made up your mind about something and you're dead sure that you're right, and then you have to come to the point where, oh, maybe I'm not right. And that was the 2013 Steel and Stone.
Never happened to me, by the way.
We thought it was a lost cause. We gave up on it. We blended
Right.
it and then all of a
Right.
sudden we put it back to barrels and we forgot about it and we came back to it. And it was the blend was not an intentional decision. It was a rescue attempt at two lots that we didn't like. And we later came back to them again and they were wonderful.
And it turned out to be one of our best sellers. So, you
Yes.
never know. Do you want to move to the Petite Fudo or do you want to show more?
What I'm going to do, I'm going to go a little out of order. I'm going to do there's a quicker video of the winery in Bordeaux that did a video for us. And then, so we'll do that. And then we'll come back, do Petite Fudo. And then I'll play the remaining of our conversation from yesterday. And that way, if anyone needs to drop off, they can do that if they don't want to watch the whole thing. But I think just seeing an actual winery in Bordeaux would be pretty awesome. So, and I've got Julia here on the call, and she is my travel advisor friend who knows so much about France. So I'm sure that she will have something to add as well. I don't know, she might know this property, but anyway, I will do that next, and then we'll come back and try the Petite Fudo. Gosh, I'm talking Spanish. Okay, I'm looking to share my screen. Let's see. So I will get out of here. Come on. There it is.
Ségur to all the friends of John's Van Drehle Winery in the US. We are in the north of Bordeaux in an appellation called Saint-Estèphe. We are on the left bank of the Gironde River in an area that we call the Médoc. We are very respectful of our environment and the biodiversity. We have an estate of 300 acres with a lot of forest and lakes and creeks, beautiful with wild nature, and we have 170 acres of vineyards with very beautiful Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot old vines, but we also have some Petit Verdot and some Cabernet Franc. The style of our wines are really structured and powerful, very dense and concentrated wines, but very refined and balanced with a lot of elegance and with some very integrated tannins. We age our wines approximately a year and a half in new oak, French oak. And we have wines that are very approachable now when they are young, but they are also perfectly suitable for long aging rest. We were created in the early 19th century by an Irish gentleman called Bernard O'Phelan, and we are entering here the room that we call the Irish room. And we wish you a beautiful tasting of our wines of Chateau Ségur.
I want that bottle.
Well, for some reason, my computer wanted to jump around the whole time that was going on. So the only way to make it stop was to move my mouse over on the side. Hopefully that wasn't too distracting for everyone. So yeah, I'm ready to visit anywhere, but especially Europe.
Well, as I told them, one of the things towards the end of the session with the ladies from France, it's very humbling for me. They've been doing this for thousands of years, and I mean, we're not even infants compared to them. But as I said that to Chuck one time, and he said, "Well, they had to start somewhere." So, we're building an industry in North Carolina. It's definitely a growing industry. It has about a $2 billion economic impact to the state. New wineries and vineyards are coming online every year. It's a pretty exciting time, but we are really babies when it comes to comparing us to Bordeaux.
I may have missed it in the beginning because I was a little bit late getting in, but where are you guys located in North Carolina?
We are in the very top of the Yadkin Valley AVA in Thurman, North Carolina. So are you in Charlotte?
I'm in Hickory.
Oh, okay. So. Well, I grew up in Hickory. So we're about an hour and 15 minutes from Hickory.
Okay. Because it's funny, I've only done a little bit of wine tasting in North Carolina. And I remember, I think it wasn't at Raffaldini. I was impressed by Raffaldini because Raffaldini was doing single varietals like you guys are. Mm-hmm. Because somewhere else I had tasted out was saying that the quality of juice that we get from each varietal isn't strong enough to do a single varietal great, bottle. But you guys, I mean, you're even, you're doing Cab Francs, you're doing all kinds of single varietals. So I didn't know if it's your geographic location or just your commitment to doing it or what?
Well, as Dan says, winemaking begins in the vineyard. What, 80% of winemaking is in the vineyard?
Yes, and 20% don't screw it up.
Right. So, I mean, I don't know if you were there when we talked about the site, but that's why we were so careful about picking the right site.
Cool. I hope to go visit, Jen. We should go meet up there.
Well, I think the site really, Chuck, he was really focusing in that area and also around Hendersonville, wasn't he?
Tryon.
Oh my gosh, I love Hendersonville. That's like my new favorite place in North Carolina.
Our challenge is the climate. In California, all their rain typically falls within a 2-month period. It's changed a little bit, but usually January, February, they're wet months. And then it may not rain for 7 or 8 months. Here, it's it can rain all year long, and controlling, it's not just the disease pressure and the humidity, but it's also trying to control the vigor of the plant itself. You're trying to get it to stop vegetative growth in July and focus all of it. In fact, that's a lot of times in California, they manage it with drip irrigation, and so that they can fine tune the soil moisture. Here, our way of controlling soil moisture is because we have a hillside vineyard. And also when it does rain, we get a lot of wind that comes with it, and it dries the vineyard out quickly. Places south of us are much flatter. When it does rain, it soaks into the soil. And if you come on the right day when we get a couple inches of rain, you see what happens in the vineyard, and it just rolls out of that vineyard. It's pretty dramatic. We should actually get some video of it sometime. But
and the soil is very rocky, so it drains really well.
Which that's actually a really nice story. If you don't mind telling it really quick, and then we can taste the Petite Verdot, is the rock and rail story and how you came up with that name.
So when we were planting the vineyard, or when we were developing the land, one of the things we realized was how much rock was in that land. It's a great place for grapes to grow, a very difficult place to build the structure of the vineyard. And we purchased a piece of equipment produced in New Zealand to pound the end posts in. Our end posts are specially made for us. They're 10 feet tall. They go into the ground about 2.5 to 3 feet. And they went through a lot of rock. We rented one of the state rock picking machines to pick up all the boulders in the vineyard. So, I mean, it's just amazing. And then we are on the site of the old Elkin to Allegheny Railroad that was running up the mountain, and I think over to West Jefferson back in the early 1900s. And our road is old railroad grade road. So we put the two of those together and came up with rock and rail.
Okay, now I'm ready to have some more.
All right. So Petite Fudo is our last grape or last wine tonight. Another single varietal. We do a couple of wines that are blends, a Bordeaux style blend, and then another blend. But we wanted to do the single varietals for you guys tonight. So Petite Fudo is that grape that in Bordeaux is not a major player, but it adds so much oomph to a wine. It's got great color, good tannins, good structure. And then they use the other wines to kind of round it out too. But yeah, it grows well here. We see it ripen fairly well. I think it was it the last grape off the vineyard this year, Dan, or was Cab Sauv the last grape off?
Cab Sauv was the last, yeah. But yeah,
Petite was one of the last grapes off.
The ladies from France, I mean, they were talking, I think typically they don't make it as a single varietal because it's just over the top. It's so tannic and so concentrated that it's used in small quantities as a blender. And here, I don't think our growing conditions it's our workhorse, but for different reasons. It's typically there's a little bit that goes into the rock and the rail. It's the predominant ingredient for steel and stone, and then we make a varietal out of it as well. So.
Well, this is my favorite.
It always gets amazing color and great extraction.
So when people say you can't do single varietals, just not true.
Is this the one you said works really well in North Carolina and Virginia?
Yeah.
Well, this one does. Cab Franc grows really well too. And for a white, Petite Manseng showing great promise in North Carolina and Virginia.
Well, it was interesting talking to the French winemakers because Petite Verdot is what Cab Sauv does for them in France. Petite Verdot is it flip-flops. Our steel and stone is typically 2/3 Petite Verdot and 1/3 Cab Sauv. In France, it would probably be just the opposite because their Cab Sauvs are much more tannic and concentrated, just like California Cab Sauvs. Our Cab Sauv is probably somewhere between it's just not as tannic. It's not as deeply colored as you might find out of California. But the Petite Fudo is just the opposite.
Right. And this one was aged for a little over 30 months.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Sure.
I can't keep track of the, I know when we were tasting, it used to be our first couple vintages were more like 16 months, and we had the luxury of just letting them stay in barrels, and we typically the recipe is 16 months, maybe 24, but that's changing. I see it in California. There's a lot of people that are aging both their Chardonnays in barrels and reds in barrels longer and longer, because it just softens and integrates the wine. You get a much more pleasing finished product if you can take that time to let it age in oak longer. So
I'm going to play the rest of our conversation with the ladies in France. So anybody who needs to drop off, I know I said this would be an hour, so my feelings will not be hurt, but I will go ahead and play the rest. And then if you have any questions at the end, just stay on. But otherwise, thank you for being here. I'll come back at the end, but just if you do have to drop off, thanks for being here, and I hope you enjoyed it. And, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'm going to send out the recording. I'll post it on the Facebook group that we have for Sips and Trips. But if you want to see it and you're not in that group, just email me, because if you registered for this, you should have my email. So anyway, thank you guys.
thank you, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
I also got a new computer, so I'm like, how do I do this? Okay. The video's not already up. Hold on. I don't want to start it all over. There we go. Oops, wrong one. Well, they both are going to start over.
Hello, everyone, and
The vinification process.
Oh, no,
But I
that's
would
the
say
wrong one.
that
Sorry, hold on.
all right, here we are with take 2, because
We don't tour people before, and the first.
Petit Verre. No.
Cabernet Franc is showing great promise here, and in Virginia, it just really grows well here. So there are a lot of producers putting out a single varietal wine. So
I think you have the perfect climate, because Cabernet Franc, you can find much more Cabernet Franc in the Loire Valley in France. So that's why maybe it's growing very well by you. Good.
thank you
And
all.
I've seen you have also how can you say that in English? You have a nice dog, which is no? You still have it?
say that again. Oh, Chloe.
Chloe. That's Chloe. I've seen on the website that she is how do you say that in English?
The mascot.
The mascot?
Yes.
Do you say
Yes.
that as
She's
well?
our meter and greeter, and she is definitely the rock star here.
She sells more wine than me.
That's often the case, isn't it?
That's funny, because I was thinking, Joelle, we know a winemaker, one grower. She's a woman, Chateau. They have a big dog, that is the mascot as well. So that's funny to find the same in John's Drehle Vineyard.
Well, we have people visit who have never been before, and the first thing they say is, "Where's the dog?"
There you go.
So
I have just one question. How is all the visit organized in your vineyard? I mean, you visit the cellar with all the explanation of the winemaking process, and then you do the tasting, or it's different?
well, this year is certainly
Not this year.
totally different. Yes. Normally, people come to visit us, and they generally we provide a tasting first at our tasting bar. And then if they want, we will take them back to the cellar and Dan will give them a tour back there.
Over here, it's very different. When you have an appointment, you kind of have to do this walk through the vineyards and to see the cellars and the vat room, etc. They make it, the wineries make it more or less long, depending on the interest. But you kind of do the walkthrough and then with the tasting. So I know it's a very different way around in the US.
We generally don't tour people through the vineyard. Our vineyard can be seen. It's a 30-acre vineyard and the winery sits on a hill that overlooks the vineyard. But generally, people don't tour the vineyard.
They drive through it coming in.
Right.
Coming in.
Yeah.
Right.
Got it.
Now I think it's different in Bordeaux because we have the vineyards are quite close to each other. So you go in what we call a chateau. A chateau in Bordeaux is a wine estate. It's not really a big castle, a fancy castle, but it's a winery, a chateau. And you drive there and you visit. Most of the time, you will have all the history, of the chateau, because there is always a very long story, because we're making wine for ages.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have story, different families, and you can hear the story of the chateau, of all the families, and then you go inside really the winery and you visit, and they explain all the winemaking process. You can see the barrels there. They explain the aging process as well. And at the end, you go in the tasting room and you taste different wine. And there is, not so much. I know in the US, we're much more well organized than we are, but sometimes you have a nice boutique where people can buy the wine or other kind of goodies stuff.
So when people visit, they cannot buy wine at
It depends on the winery. More and more, not all wineries have a wine shop, which I think is a huge mistake, because when you're there, that's when you buy. And so more and more are, making these proper wine shops. But up until a few years ago, there were a lot of places where you could not buy wine. The wine system in Bordeaux goes through wine merchants, which is a whole different story. But more and more now, yes, you can purchase wine, and they can also ship directly to the US more and more. So it's definitely becoming easier.
Well, remember, we are extremely regulated when it comes to alcohol. I mean, we went through 30 years of prohibition and couldn't taste a drop. So, it's taking this country a long time. And, North Carolina started prohibition before the rest of the country, and they kept it after the rest of the country.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, we are very regulated.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's how I used to go to events in the area where I live, and there was never wine being sold, and I never understood that because I don't drink beer. And so after doing all this research on our state laws and everything, I realized why. Because you have to be able to serve at an event here in the state, you have to be associated with a winery or a brewery. Well, breweries are easy because they're all around. They can be anywhere, but wineries are not. So that's when I looked for a winery to partner with to bring wine to events in the area, and that's how I came across Jones Mondrell. So yeah, it is very regulated, especially in North Carolina. It's harder here than where the state I'm from. So it's interesting because every state has different laws,
Different excise rates. Each state can we all have the same set of federal rules, but each state can layer on its own set of particular state, and then it can even go down to the very county. Some counties, I think, are there any dry counties in North Carolina still?
I think there are not many. It's slowly changing, but here we are, 2021, and there's still counties that won't let you purchase alcohol in. So
Really?
Yeah, when I started working down in North Carolina, you couldn't buy liquor or wine or beer in the grocery store in Yadkin County. That's changed now. So.
For a while, you couldn't buy it on Sundays. You could have it in restaurants, but you couldn't buy it.
You still can't buy it before noon on Sunday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've heard that in different states and even some, I know in South Africa that's the case also, but there are also other countries in the world where that happens, but I've heard that several times.
Yeah.
And
I will.
go on and on about Norway and their laws for
Yeah.
for her. It's insane. Like it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon and they just like put the black thing like cloth in front of it all, and it's like it was a Saturday. I was like, I can't buy anything.
Very depressing.
Wow.
Well, here in Bordeaux, you can buy wine more or less every day of the week, and you know, within reasonable hours, I would say. So,
Well, I will tell you, it's a very humbling experience. I mean, I'm not even sure we would describe ourselves as infants compared to Bordeaux. But I mean, because as you said, you've been doing this for thousands of years, and it's just, it's pretty amazing to know that this industry has lasted that long in.
And to be honest, it's more and more interesting, but having a winery from the US side, what we call the New World wines, and comparing them to Bordeaux wines is so interesting because with the same grape, and see how it grows and how it evolves and how the terroir is very different, how you can make something that's quite similar, or it's all very, very interesting, especially for the up and coming generation of winemakers, and often you have families who have wineries in Bordeaux and will have one in Argentina or Napa Valley or in different parts of the world. So it's more and more they're able to compare between the two different wines using the same grapes on different sides of the world. So it's very interesting for us.
And what is interesting is that you can find now, I think, good wine everywhere. I mean. I'm sure. I mean, it's not a place where normally you were some years ago. You were growing vines, but now you here and you are doing. I mean, you're making wine. So, and I think now we know a lot about the winemaking process and everything. The establishment of the vineyard, everything is important. We know more and more, and I think there is competition. Bordeaux will not be only one anymore. I mean, you have good wine everywhere in the world, so we have also to think of that. So and Bordeaux, what is interesting with Bordeaux is that Bordeaux is really opening more and more doors, of the castle, of the chateau, and they are offering to the visitors very interesting visit. Not only the visit of the winery and then the tasting, you can have picnic, you can have nice experiences. You can just take a bicycle, go around the vineyard, visit the different chateau. You can, I mean, it's really amazing all the different ways how you can visit the Bordeaux vineyard. Really.
It's kind of a necessity now, though, isn't it? As you just said, given the competition around the world, basically. So people have to figure out how to promote their region.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Love the idea of experiential, travel in general. So that's just, you want to be more than just visiting a place. You want to experience it. And,
definitely.
You just gave me a great idea for future travel planning also while we were listening, because I'm like, okay, so I take a winery from the States and we ship the wine over there, and then we do a side-by-side tasting so you can see
interesting.
There you go.
I can taste it. I'm like, ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. It's a very, very good idea. Very good idea. Yeah.
We've actually talked about that on this side because we are just finishing a new building that will have an event space in it and a catering kitchen, and to bring a winemaker from France over here would be very exciting.
Definitely. We can certainly help you with that. Yeah, as a perfect winemaker, we have a lot of connections between Reid and myself, so definitely.
They come visit you and you go visit them.
That's right.
That's
good.
Joelle can organize anything in the vineyard. Just trust her. She can organize anything. So she is the right person. Really.
Oh, I love that.
But I mean as well.
Very as well. We make a good team.
Good.
Well, I'm so glad this worked out, and thank you especially to our friends who are talking to us in the evening their time. So we really, really appreciate that.
Right, it's been great. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you guys. It was lovely.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Hey, look, almost everybody's here. Look at that. Cheers. You know, Diana, when you were talking about differentiating yourself, it just made me think about your amphitheater. So I thought that that would be a good thing to mention to everyone while we're still on the call.
Well, our loves are fine wine and good music. My husband Chuck picks every single song on our playlist, and it's a wide variety of music. And so we've just almost finished an amphitheater. It has a full concert stage. It will have tiered seating if the rain ever stops long enough that we can get the seating walls in. And we'll be able to, pardon?
It's coming back in a couple days for like 5 days straight.
Yes. We'll be able to seat about 1,000 people. So we'll be able to bring in some really nice music. So, you know, we think wine and music goes together. So it'll be nice if, like I said, if the weather ever helps us out.
So did anybody have any questions or anything before we say goodbye?
I just wanted to say thank you so much, Jen and Dan and Diana. This has been a lot of fun.
Oh, good. That's good
you.
to hear.
Well, hopefully in a few months, things will start opening up.
That'll be wonderful. We've been up there a couple of times this winter, and it's our getaway.
Uh-huh.
Well, thank you.
Last weekend it was perfect. Just I love that you guys have the big terrace and be outside and enjoy a beautiful sunny day, even if it is cold out. We brought our blankets inside.
We were amazed at the number of people on Saturday that we had sitting outside on the patio, and it was cold and the wind was blowing. But they were sitting out there.
I think we've all gotten a little more willing to sit outside because that's one of our only choices.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's funny how like last year this time, if it was this cold, I'd be like,
yeah.
I'm like, oh, it's sunny. Let's go outside.
Yes. Yes. Well, thanks, Jen. It's been lovely. Thank everybody for joining us. We really appreciate it. I hope you'll come and visit us.
Definitely.
Logan and I are gonna come. Allie can come too. We'll have a good
All right.
Is that okay?
Thanks so much.
Right off screen, he's like,
Come hang out and learn about the plants.
yeah.
all that,
Rob
so-
wants to just come and hang out with Dan sometime. And like,
I don't, Jen, I don't hear any children in the background there. Where are they?
She sung them to sleep.
We're gonna come, Dan. I'm gonna help you prune the grapes, and I'm gonna help make sure they don't vegetate too much.
He's not kidding. I mean, this
I'm
is
serious.
crazy. No, seriously, we're gonna make that happen, okay? Maybe like we'll get a babysitter. No, we can't get a babysitter. When Dad's in town.
No, bring the kids. We'll put them to work.
Can I volunteer my own children?
Absolutely.
Bringing them all.
Well, that's what we did last weekend. We just put them, like we had like our coloring stuff and blankets, and they drew, and we had a drink or two and played cards, and it was great. It's so beautiful there. So definitely highly recommend. All right.
I definitely want to make my way up there sometime now.
Wonderful.
Definitely.
Wonderful.
Everyone.
Well, thanks, Jen.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.